Hi everybody, I'm Zander Ng and I was on the inaugural season of MasterChef Singapore. Now, in my last recipe, we did a Singaporean classic salted egg yolk crab, and today we're having a slight change of pace and we're going for a dessert. Now, for any dessert out there, I thought that if I was going to do one for all of you at home today, it had to have some chocolate. Okay, so we have a very good quality 70% cocoa for you today. And specifically the dessert is going to be a chocolate molten lava cake. So what we want to go for, that cross section when we cut in later, the chocolate oozes out, right? It's rich but not overly rich as well. It has to strike that right balance. So a lot of R&D has gone into this recipe, I can assure you, because already it's a challenging one, even though the list of ingredients here are very, well, actually there's so few here, you can just sort of almost count them on one hand, but it's all about timing, temperature, and making sure that we have the right technique. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. And the ingredients you're gonna need before I jump in, all right, is gonna be whole eggs, egg yolks, some sea salt. Here I have some Himalayan pink sea salt. We have some butter, unsalted, some plain flour, all right, the chocolate that I talked about earlier on, caster sugar, and a little bit of icing sugar later on for the finishing touch and dusting. Okay, so let's begin. And the first step, which we need to do, is that we need to whip the eggs with the sugar. All right, it's important that during this step, we incorporate as much air as possible and it becomes light and fluffy. Okay, so I have 2 Thermomix today, which is lovely and a real luxury. Normally I'm washing the bowls one by one at home, but we're in the Thermomix test kitchen today, so I'm gonna go for it. So all of the whole eggs and egg yolks are gonna go in. All right, now I should also mention that I have attached the butterfly whisk as well, so that's just gone in. I'm sure you all know, all the aficionados at home, how to do that. Eggs are in, caster sugar. That's it for this step. Okay. Now for this whipping stage, I'm going to take the top off because again, I'm incorporating as much air in there as possible. And we're only going to be going for 4 minutes, but I have one other recommendation and trip for everyone at home, okay? So no temperature, 4 minutes. Now we're gonna go up to a speed of 4, but I don't want to jump up to 4 because what happens is that you get the eggs splashing up the sides and then you're not gonna have full contact with the whisk, if you know what I mean. So I like to actually start lower at 3, and then every 30 seconds or so, once I can see that, okay, the whisk has got full grab of that egg and it's not flying up the sides, to increase by another half in speed. So at 3 we're good now, up to 3.5. I'll just give that another 10 seconds or so. Great, up to 4. Okay, so that's the first stage, super simple. You'll see when we take the eggs out later, they're gonna be really light, pale, and fluffy. That's what we want. Okie doke, so our eggs have been whipped and already the color is a lot lighter, pale, and we've got some bubbles, which is fantastic. I'm going to show it to you in terms of what you're going to be aiming for at home, okay? First, now look how light and look how much air we've incorporated just from that step. This is why the butterfly whisk is essential here. You can't do it without. And I'm just going to scrape down the sides as well. Here we go. Okay, so the eggs are done. Now I'm going to move on to the chocolate and butter. And this is essentially going to be the chocolate sauce, if you will, which is going to give all that flavor to our cake later on. So let me just put this Thermomix up here. Now, for your eggs, I like to pop these back in the fridge. I don't want to leave them out at room temperature because this next step is going to take about 10 minutes or so. So I'm going to pop this in the fridge and then we'll continue. Step 2, all right, for our super simple dessert. And firstly, let's talk about the chocolate. Whenever you're doing any kind of chocolate dessert, especially one with so few ingredients, it's very important that you buy the very, very best quality that you can. All right, this is where all the flavor is going to come from, right? We want that bitterness that comes from a nice high percentage cocoa, right? So today we're using 70%. And also, beyond just the cocoa butter, right? There's also those butters which coat your mouth as well, right? So a very high quality one will have all of the properties that you want and will really take this dessert from something that's okay to pretty spectacular. Okay, so best quality that you can find, please pick it up. So we're gonna go in now with our chips. We're gonna go in with our butter, which I'm just going to tip out by hand. All right, butter in. And we need a little bit of salt. Why salt? Salt actually helps to accentuate and improve the flavor of chocolate when using it in a dessert. You will see for all our avid home cooks at home that when you do similar kind of recipes, you may see them call for espresso powder. Now, I think that's something that's a little more common in the US. Espresso powder is not one that I see on the shelves all the time. That's different than instant coffee, by the way. But what that does is pretty much the same as what our salt is going to do today, okay? Intensifies the chocolate flavor. It's not going to be salty at all. It's just going to give it a oomph, a bit of a kick. Okay, so all in. This next stage is going to take us 10 minutes. And importantly, we're doing this at 40 degrees Celsius on the stir option. We cannot go too high, all right? It's all about temperature control, which is what, I mean, this baby is built for, and the thing that a lot of cooks love about it. Otherwise, you may burn your chocolate, all right? You're gonna take a little bit of patience here. You're gonna take it slowly. And during this 10-minute time, I recommend that you will definitely need to pause and scrape down the sides, okay? Because you're gonna have some chocolate nibs that sort of roll up the sides there, and it's important that you kind of push them down and that they can dissolve properly. Now, everyone's gonna buy different chocolate nibs out there. They're gonna be different sizes. Some are gonna be much smaller. Actually, the ones I'm using today are quite a bit larger, right? So if it is not fully dissolved when you're mixing your spoon through later on, what you can do is just add on another 2 minutes every time, okay, until it's fully dissolved. Just to make sure that you've got a really silky, fully dissolved mixture later, which we're going to incorporate back with our eggs. Another interesting to note is that this is really just the baseline recipe, right? We've just gone in with our chocolate, our eggs, our butter, sugar. Like, these are just the bare essentials, but you can totally pimp this out, right, on what you like to do. I've done this before, following that orange trend, right? So orange oil, orange blossom water. I added in some Grand Marnier, so you know, for the adults version, you can have a little bit of a kick to it, which is delicious. Then, if you're following that orange trend, for example, you can grate some of the rind off an orange as well, just to really intensify the perfume of flavors. That's one option. If you're a bit of a chili head as well, you can totally do a chili oil, dried chili flakes in there as well. Chocolate and chili works really well together. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do, okay? It is up to you to explore, but at least today I'm going to be providing you with the baseline, all right? And then from there, maybe start with this recipe and then go on to tweak it how you like. Okay, we're about 4 minutes the way through our 10-minute cook here, and I am going to make sure I do a scrape down now for my first one. And the way I like to start my Thermomix at home personally is that I'll go from the speed control on this side. Okay, so I'm just going to turn it back. All right, my time is still going to remain, so there's no issues. I'm not going to lose the time that I set from the beginning. And I can see that, yes, I definitely need to scrape down a little bit. We've still got quite a way to go. And, you know, as I mentioned, the nibs that we're using today are on the larger side, okay? So I think that we are definitely going to need to add on a few more minutes. All right, let's put that back in. All right, so that is going to bring us to the end of our first 10 minutes, and I want to check to make sure that everything has melted adequately. So far, I'm quite happy with that. Yep, and that's going to be fine. So that's why scraping down a couple times during that 10-minute cook is so essential, because there were quite a few that were either sort of sitting on the blade or up on the side there, so very important step. And you know, believe it or not, we're actually going to start assembling our molten lava cakes now and getting ready to bake them. So I'm going to get the eggs from the fridge, all right, and then I'm also going to bring out the aluminum ramekins that I'm using today, and I'll show you them as well. First of all, the eggs that we prepared just before, they are still holding their shape and fluff, which is exactly what we are after. And the ramekins that I've used today. Now these aren't the traditional ones, so actually I don't think I can call them ramekins, but these are just some baking aluminum dishes that I got from a baking store. I've actually buttered them already, and I've actually put it straight into the fridge. Okay guys, we live in Singapore or wherever you're watching it from in Southeast Asia. It's very hot where we are, right? So if you put the butter on it and you leave it out for 20 minutes, it's gonna just disintegrate there, okay? You'll have a pool of melted butter at the bottom. So covered all the sides into the fridge, okay? Keep it nice. All right, let's begin. Eggs, so we're all gonna do the mixing into this one bowl here. So when you transfer your eggs into this, right, from the step before, make sure it's big enough to hold all the content. And I am going to go in with all of my chocolate. Cue the slow-mo. There we go. Glorious chocolate. Make sure you scrape down all the edges and you leave nothing behind. If you have kiddos at home or a significant other who loves their desserts, I should give this to them right now. They'll be very happy. And this is the part where we're actually going to start to just fold our mixture. It's not there completely. There's one more thing that we do need to add. And if I can just lean that against my Thermomix, we've got to get creative because I don't want it to fly out. We need some flour, okay? Now we don't need a lot. We just need a little bit. It's going to help as a binding agent. And all we're using today is 1 tablespoon of plain flour. That's it. 1 tablespoon of plain flour to keep this all together, okay? So that's in. I am going to sift it in. I always recommend sifting your flour when you're baking for any kind of a dessert, just because it avoids clumps. It's just the way to go. And to be honest, some of my hardcore baker friends just told me that's what needs to be done, so I listened to them. And right now, I think you'll notice from the technique that I'm doing here, this is just called folding, right? So I'm not gonna be mixing vigorously in there because we work so hard to get our eggs light and fluffy, right? There's a lot of air incorporated in here right now. So if I were just to go in there and start whipping at it crazy, we'll lose a lot of volume and it'll sink. And you know, we want it to be light. We don't want it to be a dense molten lava cake. So we're just going around the edges to the bottom and then up. So you just repeating this step, going around the edges, making sure that it's getting incorporated. This is going to take a little bit of patience, okay? You'll see that it's still very light, you know, in the beginning. And the temptation, I know, trust me, I feel it too, is that you want to start just whipping it, you know, aggressively, right? But patience is a virtue on this one. I think it's going to take us about a good 2 minutes. Please don't ask me how many times I have to fold, okay, for you at home. I know we like to follow our instructions on the Thermomix, but for this one you're going to have to eyeball. And don't forget to, when you're whipping it, right, or when you're folding it rather, really make sure that you do get to the bottom and then you sort of fold it up, because that's where typically a lot of the chocolate will sink down to, okay? So it's important that you keep going down there. So you'll notice that the color is starting to change slightly. It's going to get darker as the chocolate is incorporated with the eggs. Actually, I really can't stress how important this step is. A dear friend of mine actually was doing this recipe at home, and when she got to this stage, she vigorously beat it in here now as well, and it turned into fudge. It really turned into fudge, guys. Yeah. So really, I know temptation is there, but just follow the technique. I would say that we're about 70% the way there. You can tell that it's definitely quite a bit darker, right? And now I've reached the stage where I'm happy with that consistency. It's important that you also don't overwork it. So it's a very fine balance that we're aiming for today. Now, I brought a jug today because I want to be able to transfer it in a very clean manner. And I know that if I don't do that, I'm gonna get chocolate everywhere, which I'm very good at. So it should really look like a cake batter. It might be slightly wetter than you're used to, but again, that is also due to the fact that we only use 1 tablespoon of flour. So I'm just going to set this aside because there's still one more step that we need to do for our baking molds here. Is that the butter's there. All right, now we need to put some flour, just a little bit. Now the flour that we're putting in now is to help prevent the molten lava cake from sticking, okay, to your baking dish, your ramekin, or whatever you're using. Okay, so the butter that we use to coat and combine the outside is providing a method in which your flour can stick to and bind to. So it should look something along this lines here, like a very thin layer of flour. You don't want a clump, okay? Please avoid clumps. And also, when you're putting the butter on, make sure it covers every little section, okay? We don't want any empty parts. Reason being is that when you're inverting it later on and you flip it out, what I tend to find is that if you do have some sections that haven't been covered with the butter and then the flour concurrently, is that that's where it can rip. And once it rips while you're pulling it out, that's when all our hard work and all of that chocolate is going to just seep out. So we start with shaking it at the bottom, get that layer on there, and then we just gently turn and go around the sides. And then I'm tapping out any of that excess flour. All right, last one. We're going to go into the dish. My oven has been set now to 220 degrees Celsius. And now it's just the easy part, which is going to be to pour out. When filling up your molds, I would not go beyond 2/3 because they're going to rise slightly in the oven as well. These molds are on the larger side, and I have 4, but if you wanted to do 6 or 8, you would just go for some slightly smaller ones as well. All right, I'm just going to give them a bit of a shake and tap down so that they're relatively even on the top. And now they're going to go into the oven. Now, for the duration in which we're going to put them in, we're going to aim for somewhere between 6 to 8 minutes. Okay, every oven is going to be different as well, but I'll show you the perfect time in terms of when we want to pull them out. Okay, what the top should look like. So I'm going to pop these in the oven now. Now, the oven was actually really hot today, and I took them out at about the 5-minute mark, but it's something that you're going to have to wait and see. And basically, when we do shake them and jiggle, if I can just do so without throwing them all over my pan. Basically, the center is going to be soft and jiggly. The edges will be set. Okay, so you're looking for the edges to be set, and that center, that when you do a little bit of a jiggle in the oven, it's still moving slightly. And also don't forget, when you take them out, they're still going to continue to cook slightly. Okay, so a little bit before is also good. I am going to transfer these to my cooling rack here. We want to try and halt the cooking as much as we can. I'm going to put this guy behind. And now we've got to get our plates ready. Now this is always going to be the moment of truth. How hard are they? Not too bad. A little bit of a technique for this one is that I'll keep some kind of an oven mitt glove or just a rag, if you will. Just push it out gently on here so that the base is supported, the plate on top, and then just a quick flip. All our molds have been inverted. And now I always have to just do a little bit of a tap from the top, just in case gravity doesn't do all the work for us. All right, which one first? Okay, let's start from here. Let's see if they're all looking okay. Okay, it's a good start. It's come off. So you can just feel it's the center cooked through. This one is okay too. Yep, nice. Looks good. Okay, so good news, all 4 came out nicely. And again, it's really important, right? Making sure that you really butter the molds, cover every section. Very, very thin layer of flour as well around is essential. And now we are going to do our sprinkling, of our sugar. So this is just going to be our icing sugar. And this is purely for aesthetic purposes. Because one thing that is very true is that because of the butter and flour because of the butter and flour thin coating, sometimes you do get a couple patches that look not the most sightly, and so that's why just dusting it with icing sugar now is a nice way just to cover it up. I'm just going to push down some of these larger amounts here. Okay, all prepared, and now it's very important that this is something that you serve quickly, all right, to your guests. It isn't something that should be waiting around for too long. Today we're just going to have it with a little bit of icing sugar on top, so I haven't got any ice cream prepared or anything like that, but totally could do it with some vanilla ice cream. That would be delicious. Now, it all comes down to if we have a molten center or not. Okay, if we've just got a regular chocolate cake, is going to be slightly disappointing. So let's see. Okay, I'm going to go for the reveal right now, and we're going to punch in. Close enough? Good to go? All right, let's do this. All right, so down here, and there we go. As you can see, the center flowing out. The chocolate is gleaming, it's beautiful. And I'm gonna go for a bite just to make sure that it's working well and the flavors are good. But you can see how we've really just got that that outer casing, and then inside it's just molten lava, if you will. So let's go. It works because it's not too sweet. Okay, we only limited it to 40 grams of caster sugar. The chocolate has a slight bitterness already to it, and it's light because we whipped those eggs. With a scoop of vanilla ice cream, it would be delicious. Okay guys, so thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed it and that you thought that actually this is something that I can do at home. Right? You saw the number of ingredients, it's not too much, and even the steps that we're doing, there were very few. So what it really comes down to is making sure that when you do bake it, you don't overbake, you don't underbake. You've got to find that sweet spot, and that you know, you just do the right kind of preparations with your ramekins. So if you enjoyed this recipe and you try it, please share it with your friends and family. That would be lovely. And thank you all for joining. I'll see you at the next episode. All right, thank you everyone. Bye. Ba, ba, da, ba, ba.